Matthew Foldy, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. I mean, do you think she's going to need to testify here at some point?
This makes a lot more sense when you remember her net worth has been ping-ponging between like 14 pennies and
yes.
you know, $300 million. And you throw in some bankrupt wineries that are then not bankrupt. And then this makes a lot more sense. She obviously should be answering a lot of questions about this. As you noted, Mercy, her involvement was helping get the money to the Feeding Our Future program. I don't think it's crazy to think that she could have been very heavily involved in this. The reason we know that is because Keith Ellison, who was her direct predecessor in Congress, who's now the state's attorney general, pro-criminal attorney general, he was intimately involved with all of these people. He loved working directly with these people. And just to emphasize the fraud in Minnesota, what Amy Klobuchar is talking about, how are these not already things?
Right.
You currently can be convicted of fraud and get money in from the state government of Minnesota, regardless of whether or not she wins. And she's probably favored to win because this is a failed state.
Right.
This is a searing indictment of Tim Walz and what he let happen on his watch there.
And it's also kind of like a draft template for every other state, trying to clean up their books and save taxpayer money.
Well, normally what Minnesota is doing is the template of what to not do.
Yeah.
Well, now they can reverse that.
But the Democrats, for a long time, they have ignored this issue of fraud. And now you're saying, Tiana, that Amy Klobuchar, she's going to be part, who knows, maybe part of J.D. Vance's fraud task force at some point.
I mean, yeah, you do have to start by pointing out that Ilhan Omar in United States Congress passed the Meals Act with the sole goal of loosening federal oversight for these spending packages, right? She wanted to make it so that way she could give money to her friends and, wink, wink, give meals to the children. So, I mean, all of this can be dealt with at a national level. Like, yes, you do need at a state level. It would be ideal to have a governor that actually, gave a damn about making sure the money's going to what it should be. But like on a federal level, we can tighten the oversight by just basically reversing every single piece of legislation that Ilhan Omar has ever.
And this fraud has been going on in Minnesota since Bill Clinton failed in Somalia. And Amy Klobuchar used to be a prosecutor on a state level in Minnesota. So even if she wants to wash her hands, to Tiana's point, and say, well, I'm a federal elected official, there's nothing I can do in my home state. She has been a statewide elected official when this fraud was going on.
Schlapp, I have campaigned, we have campaigned in Minnesota for Republicans, yet Republicans, they haven't really made any grounds in winning.
Minnesota is just one of these states where it's a little bit like New Jersey, where Republicans come close and they can win sometimes, but it's a difficult state. One of the reasons it's a difficult state is some of these trends that we see, which is, all this strange and elongated voting. And when it comes to all this fraud, the only thing I grimaced when you said Democrats haven't done such a good, Democrats haven't done such a good job on fraud. I think they've done a great job. They create honeypots.
No, on cleaning up the fraud.
Because they create honeypots to give to their friends.
Right.
Look at the Clinton Foundation. How much of that actually goes to help people, and how much of it goes to all of his political friends that need contracts? I mean, this is part of the grift.
But do you seriously think that Ilhan Omar thought that Feeding Our Future was a fraud scheme from the get? Like, she's not that dumb.
She's not that smart.
Yeah.
As a pundit, yes. As a journalist, I'm not going to say that in print, but as a pundit, yes.
Look, if she can't even get her accounting records in order and make these massive mistakes, I think she can be criminally liable for this.
This comes from someone that thought it made sense to burn down our cities in the summer of love, and all this craziness, anti-BLM insanity that's in Minnesota. They think it's morally justifiable to take our taxpayers' money and move it to progressive people and progressive causes and progressive consultants in the scheme to take down America.
You had the Minnesota Freedom Fund that Kamala Harris raised money for.
Oh, yeah.
That let out criminal rapists, murderers, who then went on, shockingly, to reoffend again.
Remember, they had to shut down 6% of the state budget because it was literally all fraud. The housing supplemental service.
And Walz didn't run again. We forget this. Walz didn't run again. Why? Because he knew he oversaw it all. I believe he knew a lot of it was happening, and he got caught.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.